Recap 2023?
Let's recap 2023. So, I don't know if you guys remember in the first podcast of 2023, we talked about our predictions for cybersecurity in 2023.
Yep.
John, in his optimism, said it's only going to get worse.
I did.
Nick, in his optimism, said things get worse, but we use those things to get better. And then I said I hate certificates.
So the 2023 stuff, right? Like, I think all I really remember was the no GUI centers and networks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So like moving towards more zero trust, away from the hard perimeter as the only mechanism to keep bad stuff out of your networks. I feel like that's still in progress, but you still see them out there, right? Like, I don't think people made appreciable progress towards making it go away.
So, 2 stars on progress for 2023.
Two out of 5 or 2 out of 10?
At how many?
I was going to go
what's the
out
rating
of
scale?
5.
Out of 5, then I'm going to say it's probably 1.
1 star out of 5?
Yeah. Maybe 1.5.
Okay, we could probably do better.
There's progress. We call it 2.
2 out of 5.
Let's make it out of 10 and then...
Such an optimist. What do you think?
I just did the quick math on that. I think 2 out of 5 and 4 out of 10.
Wow, you
similar.
crushed that. Yeah.
So if you go 1 out of 10 and 2 out of 5, same.
Same.
I disagree, but we'll move past that.
Do you think things only got worse?
No. I think I was... are we doing this out of 5 or 10?
It has to be 5.
I'm going to say 1 out of 5. I don't think there's always going to be vulnerabilities that come, but there wasn't any like massive.
Like the Log4j
yeah,
stuff
like
that
large
happened in
scale.
2022?
Yeah. So maybe this year, maybe it'll get worse this year.
I mean, there's
Hey.
a lot of ransomware in 2023.
Yeah, but
right?
that's par for the course.
Yeah.
So we got 1 out of 5 means it.
We'll go with 2 out of 5 because I think 2 is.
But is the 2 saying that we got better or we got worse?
You don't confuse me. I got a headache.
I have a headache too. It's fine. Drink
yeah.
your beer. It's fine.
That's a good call. I think 2 is probably par for the course in terms of things are always happening. Things are always escalating, getting worse. But I don't think there was any large vulnerability like Log4j or the SolarWinds 2023.
Okay. That's fair.
And what about certificates?
I still hate them.
Yeah.
I still hate them a lot.
Yeah. They're
And
still
when
being used.
Yeah, when people load their certificates into their Docker image, it's like grates at my soul.
Yeah.
But I think people are doing better. I think people are learning better security practices when it comes to that stuff. So I think I'm going to give the developer community like a 3 out of 5. I think that they're making progress. And I know Hopper is one of the Gartner up-and-coming tools that should help with certificates. So 3 out of 5. Way to go, guys. Way to go.
Good job.
Good job. Cool. So that was our 2023 predictions.
Perfect.
We did it. Check.
Put it a good old check.
Check.
Recently, Google got rid of egress costs. So evidently the network cost for pulling stuff out of Google is going away, or has gone away at this point. I read the headlines, so
That's all that matters.
yeah,
That's it.
I'll have to go
A
back and dig
headline
into
on the
that
internet, it is
No,
definitely
that's
true.
You don't even need to click on it. Just read the headline. You get the gist.
But
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely reasons to choose one over another, right? Like if you were going to host a massive database and do a lot of database-heavy operations, and you're coming from a traditionally Oracle environment, like maybe Oracle Cloud makes sense. So there's definitely a lot of reasons to choose one over another.
Yeah, I think that clouds can do a lot of things, right? You can host a website from an S3 bucket is something popular. People like to say, and your storage costs are different by, how much storage you're going to use, how often you need to access it. And most of my information is AWS specific, since that's where I spend most of my cloud time. But I think that those costs add up. Like there are whole tools just for me to be able to manage the cost of my cloud. I've got like Kion. I have KubeCost if I'm running my Kubernetes cluster in a cloud environment. Like it's another job for someone to watch my cost at this point. So where's the line where we have to?
Yeah, you absolutely have to be doing that as well, because it's not the sunk cost that it used to be, right? Like capital expenditures would come out, you would buy servers, they would be in your data centers. Power, space, and cooling is largely the same once that's in there, and with the cloud, it's super variable, right? Like it comes back to operational costs depending on what's going on at any given moment. And if you don't have somebody watching that constantly, it can get real bad real quick.
Yeah.
I've definitely made some mistakes where it's cost a lot of money before, and it can snowball very quickly. And that's I guess the main question is does it always make sense to go to the cloud? And if it doesn't, do you just build your own on-prem, like, data center? What do you want to call it?
Yeah, I mean, so the cloud is really a collection of servers that we're all renting space on, right?
Yep.
But when does it make sense for me to own my own space? You guys have any opinions on that?
So there was a really visible exit from cloud in 2023. 37 Signals, the folks who make Basecamp, basically posted their 2022 cloud budget. It was $3.2 million. And they, I think they bought some Dell servers for about $600,000 in 2023, migrated all of their stuff off, and now project to save over $7 million in infrastructure costs over the next few years. I forget exactly what the projection was, but it was like 3 years or something like that to save $7 million. And so it obviously is not the case that cloud is for everybody. And this is something that I've been saying for a while now is, do you have variable workloads? Are you a startup that's just trying to get something out there quick and you don't want to have a bunch of like capital expenditures that you're not sure if you're going to be around in 5 years to do a refresh, right? Like, if you just need a proof of concept to get stuff up, you want to pay a little bit more maybe to have the flexibility of dynamic costs. I think that cloud can make a lot of sense as either all of somebody's IT budget or potentially a part of it, maybe on like the R&D side or something like that, something that isn't running for years. But like once you're an established company, it makes less and less sense to run long-running production workloads in cloud just because of the enormous cost difference.
But what if you're dependent on some of the services that cloud provides?
So this is like the same argument that people have for multi-cloud, right? You become dependent upon an AWS specific service. How are you going to become multi-cloud? I don't think that it's something that's a deal breaker. Okay, like if you're using RDS as your database service in AWS and you want to move to another cloud, there's probably a corollary, right? Like Azure has a similar database hosting service. Google does. So, you can move from cloud to cloud. Sure, your folks might have to like learn the new services a little bit, maybe learn the idiosyncrasies of it, but by and large, they're going to be holistically the same. And it depends on what level you're looking at. How portable is my application, right? If you look at the interface from your application to the database, as long as it's providing a compatible interface, right? Like you're expecting Postgres, right? That makes you, kind of cloud agnostic to a degree because you're taking a step back and you're looking at the interfaces there, right? So like if you have your application in a Docker container, you could run that anywhere. Sure, the underlying service is different, right? Like you got Fargate versus, some Kubernetes service in Google versus, running Docker on an instance and an autoscale group in Azure or whatever. However you want to host it, inconsequential. Your application's portable because it's in a container. From your database perspective, as long as you can find a hosted service or maybe even convert to running your own database service on instances between clouds, you can move, right? And so going to a completely on-premise type environment inside of a data center and not having those services available to you anymore, there's ways to get around it, right? There may be more maintenance costs associated with that, but if you take that into your calculation, you still might end up on the good side of it. But it really depends on those calculations, right? Like if you're on a team that doesn't have database engineering and administration expertise, you probably want to offload as much of that as possible to your cloud provider and have them host it, and then you can just manage the specifics, right? Like, what tables are in my database and things like that.
Yeah, because my cloud subscription is going to include that support. That's going to help me out when I hit, an issue with my database. It includes it at some level, but if I'm going to go out and buy servers, then I'm going to have to maintain those, and it's sort of a different realm, but from a cost perspective, it may make sense for some people depending on their application. I think you're right when you hit on the fact, if you're small or you're prototyping, it's a great environment to be in. The cost is pretty manageable, and there are ways for people to, turn off their development machines at the end of the day and stuff like that. So as my company scales, I may change my enterprise platform. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? It can be, I'm going to run these services in the cloud, I'm going to run these on-prem. But I'm going to need the people to support those things. Do you think that they factor that into their calculations? Like, I'm going to need to hire on this many SAs in order to be able to keep my servers alive?
So if you're doing it right, absolutely, right? Like you should be taking that cost into account. From what I understand with 37 Signals, I think that they have kind of like a managed data center service where they like have the Dell servers shipped to the data center and somebody else racks and stacks them and does like drive replacements and things like that.
It's like a happy medium right there.
Right.
It's like,
yeah,
I don't
like
have to...
It's a very nice, way to sort of transition out of the cloud at that point. You aren't having to run down the street or, down a level in your building, depending on where you're hosting it. So I think they have actually like 2 geographically dispersed data centers that they moved into so that they could have some resiliency there. There's definitely ways to accommodate all of the things that you're sort of losing out on by being in the cloud. It's just a matter of taking that into account, right? But like all of those soft costs of maintenance and things like that, there's ways to either offset them or take them into account in your calculations. And I definitely suggest everybody look at, there's, I guess, a number of blog posts and maybe other documentation that David Heinemeier Hansen, CTO of 37 Signals, put out about their exit from cloud. And it's really, really interesting stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, we should have to check that out. Everyone should check it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I mean, I'm used to it. I'm just saying there is...
Well, then I'll just keep it going then,
Yeah,
John.
there you go. And scene. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of convenience when you're in the cloud. If you're going to exit, you need to definitely strategize all of the things that you kind of may take for granted.
Yeah.
So definitely have to look at
Yeah,
those
because
posts.
Yeah.
all of these things exist.
I'm cutting you off now. Sorry.
All of these things
What was that?
all of these things existed before the cloud, right?
Yeah.
I didn't always have Route 53. Sometimes I had DNS, and I had to register my CNAMEs. So just getting back to that and finding that happy compromise between the two. But cost is a big driver between finding that. And I think with the cloud providers are really good about getting people involved. They do a lot of credits for prototypes and applications that are going to be building up. And I think that that's awesome. Do you think that the cloud providers are doing enough, or if there's anything they should be doing additionally to help people keep their costs under control? Because the tools that were mentioned earlier, Kion and KubeCost, those are all third-party tools. Do you have any ideas that they could potentially integrate?
So the cost tools in each cloud are getting a little bit better over time, right? Like the billing and cost management console in AWS is much more robust than it used to be. But, it feels like there's this, I don't know, I want to use the word dichotomy, right? Like
John doesn't like big words.
Nerd.
Yeah. The cloud provider wants to make money, and it's in their best interest if people spend money with them, right? But on the flip side, they want to provide tools that prevent people from getting soured on the cloud, right?
Exactly.
If all of a sudden you're chugging along and you got $1,000 a month cloud bill and it bumps up to 18 grand or something like that in a month, it's going to be a bad scene for you, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to reach out to AWS and see what they can do. A lot of times they'll give you a discount on some of it, or potentially all of it if it's not your problem. There's things that you can do.
Yeah. It's a good point. The billing and management consoles are getting better, and the cloud providers need to make money, right? We like their services, and they're doing a really good service for what they're providing. But should I be able to automatically have a VM or an EC2 instance that pops up and mark it as a development instance that reliably gets shut down at the end of the day when I know my developers are sleeping? Like, should that be a thing that gets built into the cloud providers, or is that really on us to maintain?
It's a really hard thing to say, right? So you have, is it the customer's responsibility? Is it the cloud provider's responsibility? And then, what kind of wiggle room is in between? So for like security in particular, you have the cloud responsibility matrix, where it sort of outlines who's responsible for security at a certain level based upon whether it's like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. People are used to seeing that, right? Like, and as you transition from infrastructure as a service to software as a service, like less and less of the security underlying your application is your responsibility. So now what we're talking about is operational considerations and cost considerations. What's your responsibility as a user? And so it really comes down to, you have the option of the cloud provider taking on things, trying to abstract things, trying to build in all of this functionality that allows you to get a hold of your costs, to allow you to not care about the underlying infrastructure of things. And the more you see of that, the more that service is going to cost, right? Because they're building all of that cost into running it.
Right.
On the flip side, you have customers who are architecturally savvy and can do crazy things given the framework that the cloud is providing, and be able to accomplish potentially much more than what the cloud provider could do within a given time frame, because they're smaller and more agile, things like that, and can do awesome things. And then you have the third-party consultant market, right? So in between that, right, like maybe you don't have the in-house expertise to do things like that, and the cloud providers haven't caught up with providing it. So that's where cloud consultants sit, right? Like, we sometimes do this type of work where we help people do things that benefit them in the cloud that they don't have the in-house expertise to do, and cloud providers haven't built an easy button for yet. And so, like, if you can find a good cloud consultant that takes costs into consideration, tries to work with you, understand your environment and things like that, I think that, at least right now, there's a really good case for going that route. Instead of hiring a full-time person to do it in-house that has all of those skills or develop those skills, or waiting around for the cloud providers to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, I agree with that because, if you're not quite ready to hire a full-time person to, manage this for you, having a cloud consultant come in, they can even document, what the system is doing, why it's doing what it's doing, where the costs need to be monitored and all of that, so that someone can come in with a head start, getting that solidified and making sure that the environment's working to an optimal way instead of having to come in later and you've already spent the money and you're already in the cloud and your S3 bucket looks like my desktop and it's filled with a bunch of stuff. That's just there. It's just hanging out. Costs me pennies every hour, every day. But I'd like to keep those pennies for myself.
You're one of those people that just keeps a bunch of crap on their desktop?
Listen.
We're
We're not here to talk about me.
Everything goes on the desktop. How else are you going to find it?
How am I going to find it?
It's on the desktop. It's right there. You see it.
I have a series of tabs and folders, but my desktop has a lot of those.
Is it all nested?
It makes
tabs?
sense in my mind. Just because you can't understand it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Fair.
Cool. Well, sounds like 2024. What is the cloud good for? It's
Absolutely something.
absolutely something, but not everything.
Just depends. Not everything, yes. And you have to analyze your environment and make calculated decisions based off cost.
Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in and making it to the end of this video. If you are in the market for someone to take a look at your infrastructure, we're available and happy to help. Until next time, have a great day.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you want to see more from EITR, just hit like and subscribe.